Thanks for being here. Hopefully you have some interest on what we're going to talk about today. But for those of you that may not know who Mobius is, we were founded in 2011, or the year 2000, I'm sorry. We're a minority-owned business, and we're certified on the Texas DIR. We are a Texas-based company. We have headquarters in San Antonio. We have an office in Plano that's just around the corner from here. And we also have an office in Houston, and we have a presence in Austin. Janab Ali and Jay Uribe started the company. They were high school friends that after they finished high school went off to different colleges, did other things later in life separate from each other, met back up at some point and decided that they wanted to start a business together, and that's where Mobius started. Currently our CFO is Rosemary Elizalde. Rob Vizzola is our VP of Sales. Rob recently joined us from HP, where he led their Business Critical Systems group. And Stephen Noteboom is our VP of Services. Really what makes us different, and I think that some of the customers that are current customers of ours today will agree, it's the people that we have. It's really the people that are the driving force behind everything that we do at Mobius. We have a really great culture of recruiting and maintaining top talent. We tend to not hire any junior engineers or junior salespeople, and our account management teams, the inside folks that you work with from time to time to get your quotes delivered and things like that, are very experienced and very good at what they do. We do provide exceptional sales support and project management. And we have a deep technical expertise focused around the data center. And at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is align all of our customer needs. These are some of our key technology partners. This is not all of them. I didn't want to turn it into an eye chart. But we are a VMware premier solution provider, and top-level partner that you can be with VMware, with many solution competencies around server virtualization, business continuity, networking, management, and automation. We're also a platinum partner with HP, again, the highest level of partnership that you can be. We do all things across the HP portfolio: server, storage, networking, and software. We also have partnerships with F5, Brocade, NetApp, Cisco. And for those of you that are doing things with mobile application development, we partner with Perfecto Mobile, and for XMatters for event correlation. What we're really here to talk about today is VMware, and so we're very strong experts in virtualization, automation, and management of VMware products. A deep technical expertise around compute virtualization, so server virtualization that we're probably all doing today. Availability around things like Site Recovery Manager and vCloud Air Disaster Recovery as a service. Management around VMware's vCenter server operations. And automation with vRealize Automation. We're also very good with end-user computing, so things like Horizon and Workspace and those other products and technologies in the VDI space that you've heard of. And converged and hyper-converged infrastructure with things like Evo Rail and Evo SDDC, which was formerly Evo Rack. What we're really here to talk about today is the vision for the brave new IT and how it's accelerating business in this liquid world. Pat Gelsinger, the CEO of VMware, recently made some strong statements around this. And this notion of a software-defined approach in all that we do in IT is core to our strategy on how we deliver value to our customers. What we're really talking about is the traditional, rigid business structures that are melting away. And they're being replaced with new, agile, dynamic business models. And the pace of this change is truly unprecedented. But every industry is transforming, from healthcare to education, agriculture, manufacturing. Virtually all industry is transforming in this new liquid world. Think about things that we didn't have in the past, like Hollywood being able to deliver movies directly to your home, or companies like Borders, for example, that gave away their online book ordering to Amazon. Right? You know, and FedEx, right? Companies that are considered, really, if you think about FedEx, you don't think of a software company, but in the industry, they're really thought of a software company that happens to have airplanes and trucks and distribution centers. Again, all areas in industry are being transformed in this world. This new liquid environment has created new business opportunities for all of us. But with this, it comes change. And a new class of competitors that are being introduced to all of us. But with that also comes a new class of threats and vulnerabilities that require all of us in IT to have a new class of thinking. What we're really talking about is the business executives that we all have to work with that are pushing us to innovate and to accelerate the growth of the business, to provide a user experience that will dazzle your customers and empower your employees, all while doing it securely to protect our brand and reputation. The driving forces behind some of this new liquid world, technology is at the heart of all this disruption, and software is playing a key role, along with an explosion of data. The dominant technology forces in these areas are mobility and cloud, though. And with that comes many challenges. Managing the explosion of devices into the workplace, iPads, iPhones, all types of laptops, things that are new to IT that we haven't traditionally had to manage in the past. And some of our data centers tend to be fragmented and rigid in technology silos. And we're running into the risk of creating even more silos with cloud silos. All of this increases the surface area for securing the enterprise that we in IT have to manage and address. Well, it's time for a new model of IT, time for a new way of thinking, where we can deliver this instant, on-demand world, where it's fluid and agile in the liquid environment. IT must be agile. We also have to secure our brand. We have to do this all securely and protect our brand and your data and your reputation. This brave new IT is truly optimized for development and delivery of all apps, traditional apps, client-server apps, modern apps, cloud-native apps, on any device, anywhere, anytime, and it all has to be done safely and securely. IT must have a bold, new, decisive attitude and make calculated moves into the new IT model. We all have to think of ourselves as fearless innovators. At our core, we're brave. We have to be fearless innovators in this new world. And with VMware's help, with the technology, with more than 16 years of experience delivering this disruptive innovation, and Mobius's experience with qualified consultants that can come help you, it makes a good matchup between the technology that's available and people that can actually make it work. Steve Jobs had some interesting things to say about innovation, but he did have some interesting things to say about innovation. And I think we could all agree that, above all, Steve Jobs was a guy that really helped transform the IT industry. There's a lot of things that he did that he had to be fearless about to go out and do and to drive other people to do to get us to where we are today. I bet you the majority of us in here have an iPhone or an iPad or some of those things that Steve Jobs was directly linked to deliver to all of us. And without his fearless innovation, we may not have some of that technology today. Where we're going with all this, though, is the VMware vision and architecture for the new IT. And it all starts with the application landscape. It's diverse, where we have to address traditional applications, client-server application, the more modern applications, and cloud-native apps now, too. And IT has to manage all of them. The architecture for this underlying infrastructure, software-defined data center, or SDDC. The best architecture for an instant and secure model of IT, where we take the abstraction and pooling of resources from compute, network, and storage. And with one unified hybrid cloud with a common management platform. We call this one cloud for any application. It's also about choice. Choice on how you want to build your own infrastructure. Do you want to go down the converged infrastructure path or the hyper-converged infrastructure paths? It's really about choice and what works best for you and your organization. Business mobility is coming into play. And with VMware products like Horizon, we can deliver these applications on one cloud, any application, to any device, anywhere, anytime. The value of this unified cloud is rapidly developing and automatically delivering both your traditional and modern applications. The secret sauce behind all this is a unified platform that's software-defined and built on VMware's compute, networking, and storage and virtualization solutions. Some of the advantages of one common management platform and one common software vendor are the intrinsic security and multiple paths to the cloud with the unified platform. Management providing you, the customers, with multiple ways to control and manage your workloads and IT infrastructure. You can choose, and it's about choice, VMware's cloud management platform, or you can do things like integrate with OpenStack services and APIs. Where this all gets us to, and Mike is going to talk in just a second a little bit about this, is things like application infrastructure delivery and automation. Many of us, big shops, small shops, it doesn't matter. We kind of all fight the same battle at some level, where it's multiple people have to be involved, and it tends to be what we've seen is the larger organizations and the more segmented in silos. The longer it takes to do things, just like provision a machine and provision an application. Typically, some of the things look like this, where requesters go to request a machine or a service, and it goes back and forth between multiple people, from the infrastructure folks, to the storage folks, to the security folks, until we finally have some sort of agreement on what type of application and service and infrastructure we're going to deploy. Today, by application infrastructure delivery automation, we can take that time down dramatically by creating one cloud and provide rapid application delivery and policy-based infrastructure automation. We can take the requester's time by creating service blueprints to deliver IT services to users. One of the other things about this is the cloud automation on-demand provisioning and what the users see and what IT sees, where you can create an app-like experience for users to go and request IT services. Whether those IT services are adding users to a group or requesting a Red Hat machine or requesting an SQL server, any type of IT delivery can now be created as a service. And with all that, IT executives and IT managers can now see the cost of all these services and help manage and maintain these costs and make it easier for budgeting. With things like application services built into this application delivery, you can now not only just simple things like, create a VM template. That's easy, right? We can all deploy a template, or we can copy a machine, and we can do things like that. But what about all the applications that need to ride on top of that? What if you need that Windows server with SQL and your antivirus software and all these other things that need to go onto it? With application services, it's the same type of look and feel with the App Store. So you can select the server and then with the apps and automatically provision that with OS, security, the applications it needs, and ready to be delivered to users for consumption. This is part of what we did at Rent-A-Center, and Mike Conroy is the director of tech ops at Rent-A-Center, and he's going to talk a little bit real quick about, not real quick, but he's going to talk a little bit about what we did for them, what their business problems were, what they were trying to address, and where they went from August of 2014 to July of 2015. Mike's going to come up now
Okay.
and tell his story about what they were trying to accomplish and what they were trying to do and what this meant for Rent-A-Center and the business.
Okay.
Yeah.
So about a year ago, a little over a year ago, Rent-A-Center was faced with a challenge in that we had a large point of sale implementation that we had to deliver. It wasn't a question of, how long is it going to take to get it done? We were given a date and said, you will meet that. At the time, it was taking us, a couple of weeks to deploy a single store, because we had a one-to-one relationship between a store server and an actual physical location. And there was no way. We were given a date, at the end of this year that we had to have the infrastructure ready, and it was not going to happen. So a couple of the other people who I work with who are not here today, who had the relationship with Mobius, went to Mobius and said, hey, we heard good things about VMware and this vRealize stuff and automation and speed to market and all that good jazz will all help us get this done. So Mobius came in, stood up a proof of concept for vRealize, and did a demo to our executive team and said, hey, look, we can deploy 20 servers in 5 minutes, and we'll give you automated approval, and we'll give you cost structures and security and all of that, and it worked well. It worked so well that we actually, and for those of you who have been around for a while, know we actually got with VMware, signed an enterprise license agreement, got it all done, and then we got told, and while we were doing all this, we looked at how we were deploying the servers for the stores. Said, okay, not only do we need automation, we need a better model for this. So we decided we're going to go with a stateless store environment, no data on the server itself, because all the server effectively is a place to host Java virtual machines. So we said, okay, let's build a regionalized cluster scenario so that we just deploy clusters of servers and the stores hit those. And this will speed us up. Instead of taking us 2 weeks to deploy a single server for a single store, maybe in a week we can deploy a whole region. That was the goal at the time, about January of this year. So in March, April, something like that. Yeah.
Of this year.
Of this year. We kicked off our big VMware implementation project that included a brand new infrastructure, brand new network, storage, compute, a whole new VMware stack over at CyrusOne in Louisville. And we did that relatively quickly. We started in probably middle of April. We got done with our initial build in July. We were at the time also standing up vRealize with Doug and Brendan here from Mobius. We spent a lot of time doing this. We had 2 guys who are here now who lived at Mobius for 3 months to get it done. We went from, again, taking a couple of weeks to deploy a single store to being able to deploy a region of stores in 20 minutes. It dramatically changed the conversation with the business. Up until July, retail operations, the executive team, were all very worried. Hey, can IT keep up? Is this something we're going to have to, is this going to cause us a problem? We went from us being the bottleneck, which is a common scenario in IT, unfortunately, to being an enabler. Because after we showed them, hey, here's what we can do, we said, all right, we're done. We're ready. You want 2,000 stores tomorrow? We can do that. It's just now okay, you guys got to slow down. The business can't take it this fast. So it's a good position for us to be in. One of the things we learned when we were doing the vRealize implementation was standing up a virtual machine is easy. Anybody can do that, like Doug said. Standing up a single VM, even with everything on it, isn't much harder. What we're using the tool for, and what you guys could all use the tool for, is we stand up an environment at a time. We stand up a front-end application server cluster including all the control points, all the software, all the security. We stand up a print server in that environment. We hook it to the logging infrastructure. We hook it to the database. And it's all in a template. It's all in a blueprint. So it is literally a one-click operation to stand up an infrastructure to support 100 stores. We've gone light years beyond what we were last year. And it is just, I can't tell you the response, the amount of positive response we've got inside of our own corporation. And again, sharing the story with others, this is the future. This is where we're going. One of the things that's still a goal for us is developing a methodology and a set of blueprints so we can deploy a whole test environment at a time. That's still a little ways away, but we're working on it. Where I can stand up a database, I can set up all the middle tier, I can set up all the front end, put all the networks in, put all the firewalls in, provision all the users, and all in a single operation. So that when QA comes to us and says, hey, we want to test this new thing. Okay, we define the environment. When they say they want to test, we spin it up, they run their test, they get their data, we destroy it. So I don't have to have 40 VMware servers sitting there waiting for QA to use them. We can go down to 5 or 6 because we will dynamically provision and destroy the environments when they want them. And that's the ultimate goal.
Sure, thanks, Mike. And so we're not done so quick now.
Okay.
Okay. So, I'll tell you a little bit about the products that we're using, the technology that we used at Rent-A-Center. So, vSphere 6, brand new vSphere 6, vRealize Automation, vRealize Operations Management, Log Insight, and we also have a little vCloud Air. And so they have Virtual Private Cloud, or VPC, and DR as a service available. That's all connected to the vRealize Automation as well. So real quick, before you had this technology, what was the process of getting a VM? So the developers or a user came and asked, hey, we need to have a new...
Well, your little animation showed it really well. So it was a multiple request scenario. So we'd have usually a development team request a VM or a group of VMs. That request would go into the VMware team, who would stand up the container or provision the resources. Then they'd hand it off. They would finish that request. They would then initiate another request to the OS admins, who would actually install an OS usually. Then they would finish. They would hand it off to the application middleware team, who would install the middleware. Then they'd finish. And they'd hand it back to the development team to actually install the software on the damn server, and then we would hand it off to security to get scanned, to get all the users added, then back to network so we could get firewall rules set up. And this process was painful. I can't emphasize enough how painful it was. And it took weeks sometimes. Sometimes it was faster, depending on how complex it was, but the average server was more than 2 weeks. Again, now it is literally minutes. One of the things, though, that makes this possible is standardization. We're not asking the development team, hey, what OS do you want on this? There's 3 choices to pick from. You get that. Now, there are obviously some places where that won't work, but those are very few and far between. So, and that's another selling point to this is, if you can standardize and convince your business users and your development users, hey, here are the things that we can support quickly. Here are all of our standard templates. If you ask for these things and you stay within the walls here and don't color outside the lines, we can deliver this quickly. We can really do DevOps. We can do all the automation. If every server is a snowflake, it's going to take a lot of time. So that's one of the big takeaways here. The lessons that we've learned is you have to standardize. You cannot do one-offs, or none of this is going to matter.
And part of that standardization wasn't just standardizing on AOS or a application. It was really the way that it used to work, right? Where there was, these silos of the technology tiers that we all had to address. And this guy had to go to this guy, and then they come back, and then he have to go to this guy. But really, through this process, getting everybody in a room to form the standard that we could apply to the blueprint, right? So with the networking group to decide on which VLANs and which IP addressing scheme and which subnets, right? And then that's a standard. And then the infrastructure team, which OS and which patches, and get with security on vulnerabilities and which patches had to be applied, and get that all done up front, right? And then it's a whole lot easier. Once everybody agrees that, yeah, that is the OS that we need to use, and it has to have these patches, and this is the network it's going to live on, and it's going to have these applications on it. Now it's real easy. Now their service blueprint for this particular project is really one OS, Red Hat Linux. And depending on which region it's getting deployed into or what its function is, you know, those things are now a push of a button. And they even took it a step further. We were talking about, you know, choice and ability to do open management and things like that, where we're using APIs where they actually don't go to the portal and do the App Store experience. They handle it like...
Yeah, so when we deploy, we start in Jenkins. So we kick off, so when we said, okay, here's an app server for this new region. It's just got a specific code set. Well, we use Jenkins for our automated deployment, so we kick it off with Jenkins. It goes and starts uses the APIs into vRealize, kicks off the server build, actually drops all the packages on it in sequence, does all the configuration, drops the code on it, you know, adds it to the cluster, and then it's live. It's really slick. One of the big challenges you guys are going to run into if you choose to go down this path with vRealize or another similar tool, the technology is the easy part. The hard part is process. People are used to doing things a certain way. They like doing things a certain way. They're comfortable with it. They are going to have to change. That, in our experience and with everybody I've talked to who's done this, that is by far harder than just standing up the technology. Lots of people can stand up the technology. Driving the business change is where the true leadership is.
Yeah, and it's not just pushing a button and off you go and good luck. You know, you still maintain some level of control, or as much control as you want to control, through the use of approval processes and automated approval processes. And how are you guys using those approval processes, and what happens with that?
So today we've only implemented one tier of approval, and only for a couple of different things. Because I said most of it comes through the API process, so it's already pre-approved when it gets there. But we have one level of approval enabled for a certain template right now, and basically it's, you know, a dev server. We stand up a dev server. Here you go. Well, anybody can ask for one. That doesn't mean they're going to get it. So it has to go up to a director level to approve it, and it's just an automated email. And they get the email, and when they say yes or no, assuming they say yes, it's not an email back to the implementer saying, okay, here, go do it. It's a part of the process flow to actually perform the task. So once you fire it off and once it gets approved, it's done. It's not a, hey, he said yes, now go do it. It just works. So that's I guess one of the big takeaways for the vRealize is once you get it stood up and start playing with it, lots of things you don't have to think about anymore. It just works. You don't have to worry about managing communication to your end users or to your business approvers. It's all there. You don't have to worry about, you know, provisioning into the right place, or, hey, you know, I've been provisioning this template or this blueprint into cluster A, now I want to do it in cluster B, so I got to copy all the templates over. None of that matters anymore. It's all integrated. It's all there.
And what about capacity management? I mean, now that you have all this that's out there and users are coming and taking, and how do you manage the capacity, and how are you using vRealize Operations to help with this?
So vRealize Operations helps us with capacity in that we see the big part is trending. You know, anybody can go look and say, hey, I've got, you know, 3 terabytes left in these group of data stores and this much memory and this much compute. What vRealize Operations gives you is say, okay, based on the last 60 days of what you've done here, I can predict when you're going to run out. and what you're going to run out of first. Or if you're not going to run out of something, but there's going to be another problem, like you're going to hit a performance bottleneck, say on disk I/O, it'll predict that too. And you'll say, okay, once I do this, even though there's disk left, I'm running 200 VMs on this particular host, I'm going to run a disk I/O when I add VM number 201. And it's really slick. It helps. One of the things it helps us with is, unfortunately for a lot of people, capacity planning is sometimes a very emotional conversation. And I'm worried about, hey, this server here that I'm taking care of is going to fall down, it's going to get hurt, it's going to skin its knee, and I'm going to have to do something with it. It just puts facts out there. It removes the emotion from the conversation, which is a very valuable thing. The other tool that we use, vRealize Business, does the same thing. We're talking about planning for workloads. So we have a group of people in our organization who are very, very fond of, Amazon Web Services. Their default answer for everything is put it out at AWS. It'll be cheaper, it'll be faster, it'll run better. Well, some of that might be true, but when we use vRealize Business, we plug in our Amazon accounts, we plug in our vCloud Air accounts, we know what our local infrastructure costs us. So when we start planning for resource loads for a specific environment, we plug that in and it'll show us, hey, you can run this at AWS, but it'll cost you $1,501 to run it internally. Or it'll cost you $1,400 to run it at vCloud Air. And again, taking the emotion out of the conversation is a very valuable thing. You have facts. You can walk up and show them. And it's not like you're making it up. You're taking either the public information off the website or your actual account data. And all of these things, when you add them all together, it changes the tone of the conversation with the business leaders. You're not asking them to take what you're telling them on faith. You have good, hard data to back up your decisions.
Right. Now let's talk a little bit about that extensibility, right? Mm-hmm. So it is extensible. We can use any cloud provider that's out there, right? And there's a lot of differences between them. We won't get into all that now because that's a whole nother debate.
Yes.
But, that extensibility, the things that it's done for you, like in the past, if users came and requested consumption of some IT service, and you didn't have the storage available, or you didn't have any more space on memory or CPU constrained, that accelerates that, or not accelerates it. It makes that process of being able to provision those IT services longer, and it starts to give the users the perception that IT is just being hard to work with. We're just saying no because we want to say no because we control it and we can say no. And that's not good for anybody. The real problem is we just don't have the internal infrastructure to be able to support what they're asking for. And with the extensibility into vCloud Air, it gives you an opportunity to not say no. When people come, if you don't have it internally, fine, we'll put it out here. And then there's that choice, right? Things like vRealize Business that can help you decide about, we're not going to tell the user no. Now we just have to decide where we're going to put it, what's going to be our best, cheapest, fastest option, and put it out there. Is that how you're kind of using vCloud Air virtual private cloud today?
We've done a little bit of that, and that's honestly the goal we have, is to do it that way. We are planning to, the industry term is cloud bursting. So when we have a workload that we don't have the resources to meet internally, one of the options for deployment out of vRealize Automation is our vCloud Air infrastructure. So we're not there yet, but we're working on the networking part of that so that we can just extend our own network out there. And when we do that, we'll have the ability to, okay, we either don't have the resources to deploy what they're asking for, or for some variety of reasons, we just simply don't want to put it internal. Maybe it's a temporary thing and we're trying something out. We deploy it to vCloud Air, and it is exactly the same as deploying it internal. There is no difference. So it's just you're selecting the destination you're deploying to. When we get to that point, and then we can move workloads back and forth. So we try it out in vCloud Air, and it works. Okay, great. We pull it back in. I don't have to rebuild it, don't have to change the IP address, don't have to change firewall rules. It's just, you're changing, it's like moving it between clusters. That's the paradigm you're using. The capability exists to use other clouds, Rackspace, AWS, things like that with it. It's not quite that clean for obvious reasons, but it does work. So that's the big thing. DR as a service is the other vCloud Air product we're consuming. We made a conscious decision when we were building our POS infrastructure to use VMs with no data in them. So I don't care about an individual VM. It's the whole pets versus cattle conversation.
Yeah, and I will add that when he says their POS infrastructure, that's their point of sale system.
Yes. So our infrastructure is actually very nice now. Thank you, Steve. So when we made that decision, one of the side effects, and we didn't make the decision for this reason, but one of the side effects is DR now becomes very, very simple. Because all I have to care about is making sure that the blueprint exists out of vCloud Air in the DR as a service space. So, you know, the whole DR conversation has evolved over the last couple of years. Traditionally in DR, you bought a very expensive off-site data center or additional data center, and you had a whole bunch of equipment sitting there doing nothing. And it's a very difficult conversation to have with most business leaders. With DR as a service, and there are other offerings besides vCloud Air, but that's what we're here to talk about, you don't have to buy all of that. It's an easy to consume, you know, small footprint that you pay for what you use at the time. And their commitment is they'll scale it up really fast if you need it. So we have 5 VMs running there right now because I have 5 different potential templates that I'll have to instantiate. If I declare a disaster and have to turn up 1,500 VMs in 2 hours, they can do that. And I only have to pay for it in a disaster, in which case nobody's going to care really how much it costs. So again, it's changing the conversation in a good way for us so that we can give the business what they want.
Yep. And the last thing I wanted to touch on real quick was NSX. So you recently went through an NSX deployment, the brand new NSX 6.2.
Yes.
And how are you using that, and how critical was this implementation to the project that you were trying to accomplish? So
we are either very brave or very foolish or both.
They're fearless innovators, I can tell you.
When we finished our vRealize implementation in August, we wrapped up that project late in the week, I think in the middle of August, Wednesday or Thursday, and literally the following Monday started our NSX project. We use that to manage and protect our payment card processing infrastructure. So it is I won't say the single most, but is one of the single most critical pieces of our infrastructure for retail. So we use it for microsegmentation, we use it for layered load balancing, we use it for dynamic routes. It took us 6 weeks?
6 weeks.
6 weeks from zero to standing it up, getting it running, getting real workloads in it, and making the production network team at least reasonably comfortable with integration. It's complex, I will give you that, but it's also very, very powerful, and you don't have to use all of it. So it does for networking what the base VMware product has done for servers, for compute. So it takes all of these complex networking components and puts them in software. So I can do virtual routers, I can do virtual firewalls, I can do virtual load balancers. And it's blending the responsibilities from virtualization and network into a common resource and responsibility pool. It is a little scary for a lot of people, but it is the way of the future. This is software-defined networking, this is software-defined storage, this is software-defined data center, and everybody will get there at some point. But if you don't do it this way, you're going to do it with a hyperconverged or a converged infrastructure. This is just the first step in the journey.
Sure. And thanks, Mike. And through all this and the complexities of getting these deployments completed, the projects that you needed to have done, you know, how was it working with Mobius? I mean, what was your experience there?
So with the project that we, the couple of projects that we did with Mobius, there was a lot of concern, both in IT leadership and in the business side of, hey, can IT actually get this done? We had, historically not made a lot of dates. Projects ran over, budgets ran over. But this set of projects, when we started with Mobius, we embedded ourselves with Mobius. We lived at the Mobius office. We had a couple of guys who are here right now who were at Mobius for 3 months straight. Never came into the office, our office directly. Using the Mobius resources, Doug and Brandon, who's up there somewhere, we got it done. We impressed VMware themselves by the amount of progress we made, how quickly we got it done, how much of a grasp we had on the products, and we could not have done it any other way. And I don't think we could have done it with any other partner.
Thanks, Mike. And no, for those that are thinking, Mike has not been paid for his appearance here today.
Hey.
I bought him lunch once. That's it.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. And we also recently, and as part of the reason that we're doing this event in a Cinemark theater today, is that we recently worked with Cinemark on a project that they were trying to accomplish. And we thought it would be a good idea to kind of have this event in the Cinemark theater, kind of celebrating the end of that first project that we completed with them and where they went and where they had. And Scott Bauer is going to come up and talk to us a little bit about his experience and what they were trying to accomplish and where they were and where they are today.
Okay, great. I want to say thanks for having me, and thanks for coming to the Cinemark Theater to watch the great movie today. What I talk about is going to be really different than Rent-A-Center. Rent-A-Center is really, really advanced in what they're doing. And at Cinemark, we're still moving forward slowly on a lot of these things. So a brief history. I've been with Cinemark about 9 years. We have approximately 500 theaters. We're in 14 different countries. Where you see most of the technology at Cinemark is actually in the theaters. The corporate data centers and things like that, they're very small in comparison to a Rent-A-Center. About 10 years ago, Cinemark had a data center. And it was underpowered, it was unorganized, it didn't make a lot of sense. So when I came into Cinemark, we made the move and did it kind of the old-fashioned way. We put in the old 6513 catalyst switches, ran a bunch of cables, it put in a whole bunch of power, did the traditional thing. About a year ago, we renewed that contract for a data center, but we started looking towards the future. And everyone's talking about cloud, and everyone's talking about all these emerging technologies. And so beginning in January of this year, we replaced all of our Cisco infrastructure. We went with the UCS path. So now we have our UCS blades, Nexus switches, and all the latest and greatest technologies. Way back when I saw VMware, I didn't quite get it. I have to be honest. When I saw a GSX server and I could run 2 servers on one, I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And then I could run 3 and 4, and then all these different new versions came out, and all this stuff started happening. Well, I can say now that Cinemark is all in on VMware. And the reason we're all in is because we believe that it's the best hypervisor, it has the best tools, and it has solutions for more than just problems that are related to technology, as we heard from Rent-A-Center. Something else that I think is very important is how I met Mobius.
Sure.
I think depending upon what positions you're in, you get a lot of phone calls, you get a lot of emails about, hey, come see the Steve Jobs movie, for example.
Yeah.
Or, I want to meet with you, I want to do this, I want to do that. We want your business. That's a challenge for all of us to manage. The reason that I'm here today is because it's not because Mobius has great cold callers, it's because VMware brought Mobius to us. When we had expressed an interest in changing and updating our VMware environment, they said, let's bring in Mobius. So I know inside every company there's challenges related to the politics. If we do this here, we do this here, we do this here. I can say with confidence that we navigated through that process, and we've been very successful with it. So if there's concerns related to that, it's something we were able to get through. I'm also told if I say Mobius, I get $10 each time, so I'm going to say Mobius,
Yeah.
Mobius, Mobius,
Yeah.
Mobius. But again, VMware brought them to us, and now we have taken that small piece of business where we used to run some VMware here, and we were on 5 standard and all this stuff. Now we're up on VMware 6 Enterprise Plus. We're obviously using the high availability, the distributed resource scheduling. We did get the operations manager piece, which I can't speak in all the detail because we just recently finished the product, and I'm just not that experienced with it. What I've seen, it's wonderful in what it can do for us. Site Recovery Manager is something else that we're using, and that is critical to our continuity plan for moving forward in the future. Now, we talked a lot about automation and one-button clicks and things like that. In terms of the future for VMware and what we're going to do at Cinemark, we don't know for sure, but we know there's a big cloud out there. I know in a few years that I'm going to have to look at my data center again and decide what I want to renew. The most important thing from a management perspective that I guess I could leave you with is that we have put ourselves in a position where in these 2, 3, 4 years from now, we're going to be able to make the right decisions to best serve the needs of the customers, which could be our theaters, could be whatever, the accounting department, whoever that is. But we're going to be able to serve them and make sure that we're getting the best value. If that best value is implementing many of these automation methods, we have the ability to begin that process now. So it's been a long road with me and VMware over the last 10, 15 years. And every time I see it, I'm still a little bit amazed that we can do more and more and more with it. So I know my presentation is significantly different than Rent-A-Center. It's not necessarily a technology viewpoint. But if you have any questions or doubts or anything that you'd like to discuss, I know there's a few minutes for an open session that we'll be filming. And then I have 2 guys that work with me, and we'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions one-on-one. So sure. If you have any questions,
sure. Yeah. So I know that when we did start the project, when we were brought in, some of the things that you were trying to address and Cinemark was trying to address was, the need for a highly resilient, available network or available infrastructure, and a better way to do disaster recovery, right, and high availability and those types of things. And how's a little bit about the project that we just completed with Cinemark. They were a vSphere 5.5 a customer. They wanted to upgrade to vSphere 6 to take advantage of some of the new features, specifically around distributed switches and NetFlow.
Correct.
But also for the new features in high availability and DRS and those types of things. But one of the things that they didn't have that they wanted to address as well was DR.
Correct.
And so how has this helped you address those problems, those needs that you had for where you were and where you're trying to go for these first steps? How has this vSphere 6 upgrade and the Site Recovery Manager addressed your needs and problems, and has it been good, bad, and different? Where do you stand on those things today?
So we finished the project just a few months ago. When we started the project, I gave them an impossible date to meet.
Another impossible date.
Yeah, it was an impossible date, and we missed it by about a month, which was actually ahead of when I thought it would be done. So they did a fantastic job. And since then, we have a Site Recovery Manager up and running, and we're still in the initial phases of testing and validating that it's doing. Because I have to admit, sometimes you just don't believe that it works. Because
it's
before
too easy.
There were complicated processes and stuff. So sometimes when things are too easy, we don't trust them that much. So we're still walking through that trust process. And as we continue to do our tests and document our tests and get the trust of the various departments, it will accelerate and we'll be able to have 100% of our plan implemented. But it's a great way to do continuity.
Right,
it
right.
really changes the way that we think about the levels of difficulty to get things accomplished.
Okay. And Cinemark also has some vCloud Air similar to Rent-A-Center. So when we talk about that, it's different. It's different primarily in scale, right? They're still doing a lot of the same things. So there's big organizations, small organizations that can all take advantage of this, and it does good for everyone. But what were your DR? How did you handle DR in the past before Site Recovery Manager?
So DR in the past, we have a person that's directly responsible for that, works with the different the key players, whether it's the application owner or the technologist and things like that. And while we still have that coordinator, now they're not focusing on necessarily how to do this little data part or this little part, but we're focusing on, okay, now we need to take this object, get it over here, we know it's going to be here, let's automate a small process here. And it's real. I think it's made it a lot easier for us. Again, we're still in the early stages, so I can't tell you that I've tested all of my key applications and I didn't have any issues. But from what I've seen, and I've seen enough on the applications we've tested, that it looks really good. And I think our continuity program is going to be able to expand and be more detailed. Continuity has a lot more to do than just technology. And so now, instead of just focusing on the technology, we can take this particular resource I have and we can go ahead and have them focus more on time with the business units and do other things that really do add additional value. So I think a lot of the value gain for Cinemark has been outside of necessarily bits and bytes.
Right. Okay. And your plans to leverage, so we do have a Site Recovery Manager that's working. You do have vCloud Air Disaster Recovery as a Service, and I know you're not fully using that yet, but starting to dip your toe in that water and test it out a little bit. How's that going?
Right now, I would have to leave that for the technical guys to get into the details, honestly. But it looks very promising, and again, it's kind of the path that we're looking at. We're looking at moving potentially some development servers out there first.
Right.
That's kind of the first step everyone does. After we get comfortable with the development steps, then we'll go into more of the continuity side. We do have Site Recovery Manager, and we do have the old way still of storage and servers and that type of environment. The reason we did that is because we're comfortable with it, and management is comfortable with it. So to take them and just say, hey, we're going to put in this new stuff and then everything's going to be up in the cloud in case of emergency, that's a little bit for them to swallow, especially when there's an investment in infrastructure and things like that. So Site Recovery Manager is the main method right now, with the eye on the future being that cloud-based service.
Okay. And I know before we started this project, you didn't know Mobius, we didn't know Cinemark that well.
Correct.
We know we've made it through this first project together. What was your experience working with Mobius and the consultants that we have and the project in general? How did it go?
So I traveled a lot during the implementation, so they actually got to use my office.
Right.
I didn't leave a mess, so that was good. But seriously, they did a great job. It was very clear what it was that were the objectives. So it wasn't like, well, maybe we're going to have this done. It was etched in stone what our objective was. So by defining the objective, we actually could determine if we had success or if we had a level of failure. And then every week, I would get a nice update that, while it was a little long at some times, reading on my phone, it had that page that said, hey, these are the areas where we have issues. These are the people that are responsible for working on them, whether it was a Cinemark employee or whether it was a Mobius employee. Sure. And we actually did run into issues on our side that we had to resolve with our UCS implementation. And because of that, we actually slowed Mobius down, and they were still able to accelerate through the issue after we got our part corrected and come very close to what our date was.
Yeah. All right, I appreciate that.
So,
and I will say that Scott was honestly tough to get over, right? He wasn't just because VMware's bringing you here, I'm going to let you do all this work. It was, a test. You know, it was, we're going to let you come in now. We're going to do this one project. Let's see how it goes, right? And I think we passed that test.
Absolutely. Mobius has done a great job for us. And I don't know where everyone in this room is in their VMware path and their converged infrastructure. But if you're interested in doing basic things like Cinemark is doing, or more advanced things like Rent-A-Center is doing, Mobius can be that partner that can help you do that. And VMware, I can't stress enough, is a great platform. What I've talked about is the small part, just server compute and storage and things like that. But when we get into not just vCloud Air, but mobile device management and other technologies, they're building a great portfolio of products that I think are going to help me and Cinemark be successful in the future. I think it can do the same for others.